All right, everyone, we are going to continue our press conferences here. We are joined by driver Denny Hamlin and crew chief Christopher Gabehart of the number 11 Toyota for Joe Gibbs Racing and the pole sitting team for tomorrow's Cookout 400. We're going to kick it right off to questions. If you have one, raise a hand and we'll get a mic to you. We're going to start with Jordan Bianchi in the middle, and then we'll go to Bob.
Jordan Bianchi, The Athletic. This question's for both of you. Thoughts on the option tire and how it went during practice?
A couple tenths faster, a couple tenths slower over, 40-some laps or so. So, I mean, personally, I would love for the option tire, the soft tire, just to be the tire, because I think that, we stopped around lap 40 or so on that run, and I feel like it was just about to take off lap time wise. So that's what we kind of used to have back in the day. So it's possible. We've built a tire that certainly has got some good fall off to it, and certainly had some good front end grip as well. So if we're experimenting this to see if we can run those tires in a race as just the only tire, certainly I think that that's a viable option.
It's not every day he's more aggressive than me, but that was a little more aggressive. For me, I need to see it in the race a little bit more, just because in terms of understanding how it's going to perform with respect to the option, because the track changes so much in practice here at Richmond, especially in the first 5 or 10 minutes. But certainly there was considerably more wear on the option, and it does appear that it's going to fire off faster and maybe go slower, and already seemed to be going slower in just 40 laps, which isn't quite a get-home lap for here at Richmond. So definitely a lot of potential.
You get 2 sets of these for the race, Chris. How are you kind of in your head laying this out, and when you might use them? Is this a situation where you want to keep one in your back pocket for the last 40, 50 laps if you get that caution?
Well, it's like every race. You tell me when the cautions are going to come out, and I'll tell you the strategy you should use. Unfortunately, my caution Ouija board is clearly broken right now. I hope we fix it over the 2-week break, but certainly I think you're going to leave them laying for the end of the race for the most part. Now, I won't say there'll be some cars that maybe need some points that might try to put a set on to go steal a stage win or something like that. Some of those cutoff cars potentially. But I think to win the race, I think you'll have to leave them towards stage 3.
We'll go to Bob, then Reed, and then Adam.
Bob Hockers, Fox Sports. Dane, do you feel any differently about winning the pole and your chances to win, considering there's this option tire out there, which kind of throws a wrench in everything?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you ask Chris that question, he would say he doesn't want any novelties thrown in. But I understand why we're doing it. I think it's a good idea. But yeah, anything that where something bizarre could happen and you lose on it, it's definitely a possibility. But it is the same for everyone, and everyone's playing by the same rules and has the same tire allotment. So I think it's again, it's just, do you get unlucky with cautions or not? That's the only thing that can really throw a wrench in kind of what the normal running order would be.
Reed?
Reed Spencer with the NASCAR Wire. The guys on TV expressed shock that your lap held up for the pole, given how early you ran. Were you surprised too?
Well, he told me I needed to back up to win the pole. I needed to back up my lap, and we did, and it did. So we know historically that it always does fall off. But I felt like I did as good as I could on the lap. Like there was no kind of regrets with it, and anything that I could have done different. But I feel like we made some really, really good adjustments between the 2 rounds, and I was able to execute the lap that I was trying to execute. So was I surprised it held up? Yes, I definitely was. When I ran it, I thought that was the most I could get out of the car. There wasn't anything left there, but as cars go, and certainly there was guys that ran much faster than us, had less laps on tires. When they didn't beat us, it certainly gave a little bit of hope going into that last round.
Chris?
Cheek, Richmond Magazine.
Far right over here. Yep.
Adam Cheek, Richmond Magazine. Denny, Richmond being your home track, what does your continued success always mean to you? I'm sure you look forward to coming here, and also on a more technical level, how do you guys approach this race?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of said it earlier that I probably put a little more pressure on myself to perform at this racetrack, just simply because I know what it takes to win here and what I need out of the car. I don't always express that correctly, but I always put a lot of pressure on myself to perform here, and I feel like I've got good techniques that help. That's equaled success in the past, but we've gone through so many car changes, tire changes, things like that. But the basics still, ring true at the end. And so I love winning here. To have 5 is certainly exciting. I feel like each one has been a little bit different, car and COTs and Gen 7s and all those different things. But it feels good to come here and still be able to perform, 20 years after, I was competitive here in my rookie year.
Go to Nate Ryan.
Nate Ryan, NBC Sports. Denny, I know this is difficult because we're asking you to predict the future and never had this kind of race before, but at Bristol, that was like a total tire management game, and it was like you, Martin, Brad, like the veterans. Like, if it unfolds that sort of way tomorrow, do you feel like will it favor the experienced guys, the veterans who know how to manage tires?
It will be a little different than Bristol. No matter what, it's going to be. I think that because I think these will. It's not going. I don't think it's going to hit a cliff like where one lap it just as Kevin Harvick says, the switch turns off, your car turns off. I don't think it'll be that moment, but I think it'll happen over a 3-4 lap moment when it does finally the switch goes off. Sure, the guys that are good at managing tires and things like that will always have a little bit longer switch than others. But I just think that if it happens under green, we're just going to come in and pit. I think so. It just depends on how the cautions work out. I think it's going to depend on certainly how long you're going to ask from those tires at the end of the race if you are saving them, and that's your only last remaining set, and you got 60 laps to go. That's going to be a tall task, but I like my chances against anyone in that scenario.
We'll come over here to your right, gentlemen.
Jackson did Richmond Times-Dispatch. You talked a little about the strategy with the option tires. How much you see that kind of changing tomorrow just with cooler weather?
That's probably for you.
I think the cooler weather played a factor at North Wilkesboro. In practice we saw one thing and certainly had a feeling going into the race that in those conditions we might see this. And then we lived the race where it was a night race and cooled off and certainly felt differently about it afterwards. I don't think this track is capable of that level of transformation from one condition to the next. But I do think until the lights turn on here at Richmond, you won't know what you have.
Go to Davey in the middle.
Davey Siegel with SiriusXM. Chris, for tomorrow, do you have an idea of when you want to put both sets of reds on? Are you going to react to those around you? I mean, how do you go about approaching the timing of when to put them on?
I mean, I have a rough game plan. I have a rough idea of how most will tend to use them if they know when the cautions come out. And again, depending upon what their agenda is. I do think you'll see some cutoff teams that may need to get a little desperate at the end of some of these stages to try to go grab some of those points. And I think that would be a wise move for some of them if they got that opportunity. But again, to win the race, I think you have to have them laying around as an option in stage 3.
We'll take our final question right there in the middle.
Jeffrey, Motorsports Today. This question is for you, Denny. Do you feel like this is the right time for NASCAR to introduce the option tire, or do you feel like they should have done more testing on it before bringing it to a points race?
Well, we've done so many different tire tests, and there's only been a handful of cars out there, and so nothing replicates real world like the real world. And so I think that they did it at North Wilkesboro as a blind. They did do it during the tire test a little bit, and they were wearing out extremely high. Then they put all the cars on the track, and it's just not as bad. And certainly, I think if they would have tried this tire at a tire test, they probably would have got 20 laps out of it, and it would have been roasted because there's just not enough tire rubber filling in the pores of the track to keep the wear down. So I think you almost have to have these real life moments of trial and error to try it. And certainly this shows me personally that we can get a lot more aggressive with our compounds on these short track tires. I would have never thought it would have lasted 40 laps, truthfully. And I think tomorrow there's a chance it could go even longer. I'm not sure. So it could go the other way too if there's more load. So it's just, who knows how this turns out, but I think it's safer to do it now than probably in the playoffs.
Thank you both. Best of luck tomorrow.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, there's the checkered flag. Great job, driver.